Welcome back to the show. Today got a real special treat for you guys. A real UGA insider, Chip Towers. We'll get to talk to him right after this. Everybody, welcome back to the channel. Big Dog Brett, thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Today we have a very special guest for you guys. We're going to be sitting with and picking the brain of Chip Towers. Chip, really appreciate you joining the show today, sir. Thank you very much.
It's anytime you get an invitation to sit down with Big Dog Brett, you better take it. That's the way I understand it. So good to be with you, and it's good to talk about some football finally being right around the corner.
You know, we've got less than a week left. We'll be getting into week 0. You know, it's not a full Saturday of football, but at least it's something. It's kind of like walking out of the desert.
I don't even know. What do we have this weekend? Is there anything that rises to the level of gotta watch it?
For me, one of the games, I think it was Hawaii is playing. And I want to say Fresno State was playing. So I'll have to double check on that real quick, but there's not going to be a ton of games.
Yeah. You're a serious college football fan if you want to tune into the Hawaii game.
I want to say the earliest confirmed game so far was Nebraska and Illinois, Hawaii, UCLA, UConn at Fresno State, Southern Utah at San Jose State, and I think that's it. But I will watch the Nebraska game just because I'm not a big Nebraska fan, and I like to rub a little bit of salt in their wounds from time to time. So,
man, it is you've been pouring a lot of salt the last several years.
Well, it's almost like picking on Tennessee fans. It's just too easy at some point, so you got to let them go.
Yeah. It's bad. Yeah, it's a very good comparison. Tennessee and Nebraska, they need to schedule a home and home and call it the Misery Bowl or something.
I think me and you might be able to help them get that lined up.
Yeah, we'll get that. Let's broker that deal.
Well, we know that Chip, you've been on Twitter for over 12 years now. If you guys want to go follow Chip, he's at C Towers AJC or at C Towers AJC. He's got over almost 58,000 people that follow him over on Twitter. He posts tons of articles all the time. You guys really should check him out, which one of the big reasons I wanted to have him on the show. He's so in tune with everything that's going on at UGA. I just couldn't wait to pick his brain. So I'm going to kind of start off with some questions here. I know I've set the bar for you, but let me see what you got. Everybody's really excited about JT Daniels. That's a Georgia fan. We get a lot of people from outside of Georgia that's saying, well, you know, he's not really that good. I have my own personal take. I wanted to get your opinion on JT Daniels. What do you think about JT Daniels?
Well, I wouldn't count me as a skeptic, but I am skeptical. You know, I mean, I watched all the games he played last year. I followed intensely, you know, the whole quarterback drama last year. And that's what it was. I mean, you think about last year, it's incredible. I mean, at this time last year, we weren't talking about JT Daniels at all. You know, it was only a couple weeks before this time that we found out that Jamie Newman was opting out. And, but yeah, you know, here, so all I really have to go on, of course, we don't get to attend scrimmages anymore or practices.
Right.
So I don't have live eyes on a bunch of 11 work, but Georgia's defense at last check is going to be pretty stout this year. And I do believe that based on everything I know about it. And JT Daniels and Georgia's offense has been going to war with those guys the entire preseason. And I really like the feedback I've gotten from, coaches, but players especially, just funny things that I've heard about JT. He likes to talk trash. Him and Lewis Seen in particular talk a lot of trash to each other. It's tough, and Georgia's offense hasn't looked great in the preseason, but some of that has to be tempered with you're going against a top 5 defense, probably, or certainly a front 7. And so there's a lot of things that you can put into that. I apologize. I think something's happening here at my house. I don't know whether there's a delivery here, but the dogs are getting all worked up. Or maybe it's me talking about JT Daniels. But but I saw JT Daniels last year, and I saw his stats, and we know who he played. He didn't play Alabama. He didn't play Florida. He didn't play the top teams in the SEC. Now, he didn't play the Sisters of the Poor either. Those were 3 SEC games and a pretty doggone salty Cincinnati team that might have been the best defense of all of those guys. 10 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Everybody knows all about the QBR and the yards per attempt, and all that went dramatically up. Only 2 interceptions, but I know you saw, Brett, there were some drops too. He does throw a pretty hot ball, and that can be attributed to a couple of those interceptions not being made, but there was a huge one in the Cincinnati game that could have changed things.
Yeah,
it's fortunate too.
There was a couple of times when I was watching that game, I said, there's times when you see a quarterback will thread a needle and you'll go, that was some serious skill. And then you'll see times when the ball happens to end up at the right place at the right time, and you go, that was dangerous.
Yeah.
And I saw a couple of those in that game.
And he's a bit of a gunslinger, which in all the great ones, really. And we'll see whether he's great. I mean, I can't believe the Heisman odds, and we'll see how that turns out. But the great ones are gunslingers. They believe they can make every throw. They want the deep throw before they want the check down. And that's not a bad thing, generally. And the other thing, Monken has just gushed about him. And, Georgia is just transitioning now from camp into installation. And this is his strength by all accounts.
Oh, yeah.
Putting in the game plan. Monken said he loves everything about him in that environment. He particularly loves his work at the line of scrimmage. So, I think you're going to see a much more polished JT Daniels than the one you saw that was thrown into the fray for the last 4 games of last season.
Now, one of the things that I really do like about Todd Monken, his track record speaks for itself. And we could go down his list of accolades, but one of the things that I really like about Todd Monken is his coach speak is just about at a 0. He is very much, he'll tell you exactly how he feels. You can tell a lot of times when the guys ask him questions, they almost don't want to ask him because he's so incredibly honest.
Yeah.
So if he's the kind of guy that he walks up and he pats you on the back and he says, that's acceptable. That's a heck of a compliment. So when you see him jump out there and say he's pretty comfortable, that's really good.
Well, that's clearly born of his NFL background because, feelings aren't part of the equation in the NFL ball. They're going to walk in there in the locker room and tell you you're cut because you're not good enough, and thanks for coming. And that's Monken's most recent environment. And Kirby's probably thankful we only get him twice a year, preseason and then before the bowl game, because if you ask him a question, he's going to be honest about it. And he's had some interesting answers for sure.
Well, I want to change gears on a couple of things here. You wrote an article not too long ago about Cedric Van Pran. There's a lot of people who don't know anything about this guy. I know you speak pretty highly of him. I wanted to get your take on Cedric Van Pran since nobody really knows who he is. If you're not a diehard Georgia fan, you don't know who Cedric Van Pran is. So I want to get that information out if we can.
Well, here's the first thing, and this is what's different about Georgia under Kirby Smart and Georgia under previous regimes is just that, you lose Warren Erickson, and Warren Erickson is there because he was the better option. There's nobody's. We were talking about feelings a while ago, and they're in it to win it. And Warren Erickson, as I understand it, is just far more proficient, or has been, at all the things that come with center. Besides just blocking your guy, it's identifying the mic and calling the blocking scheme for the offense. Very important job. Then he breaks his hand. So what do you do then? You turn to the number one center prospect in the United States of America that you got out of New Orleans away from LSU. I mean, that's pretty stout. And Texas A&M and I don't know if Alabama was in on him. I don't get that. I don't follow recruiting quite to that level. But this is a guy that was, obviously everybody wanted. So, and so that's your fill-in. And, Jamari Sawyer's worked some there, but that's really just for him to be ready in case something happens to Cedric Van Pran in the heat of battle. I think you would see Jamari come in there because as much as Warren Erickson wants to snap with his right hand rather than his left hand, I don't know that's something you can trifle with, especially against a defensive front like Clemson. So, but this was my first chance. He was available on a Zoom, which to me, with the way Kirby runs his program, speaks volumes in it itself. Just the fact he's trotting that guy out there as a redshirt freshman. But that was my first chance to talk to him extensively, and I was just so impressed. I don't want this to come off wrong, but football players generally fall in a couple of categories. And you got guys like John Fitzpatrick, who's terribly eloquent, but he doesn't say anything. He's too busy. What does coach want me to say? What is the rhetoric? What does the coach speak? Either Van Pran hasn't been schooled up yet, which they'll get around to, I'm sure, or, he just seemed to me just very naturally intelligent and comfortable, which says a lot about his environment. He played at a school in New Orleans that plays for championships every year. He kind of ended up playing center there by default because they didn't have anybody. He was actually playing defensive line when he started in high school. And you can tell at 6'4", 310 or whatever he is, he'd probably be a pretty good defensive lineman. Hush, Baxley. But anyway, he would. I was just very impressed with everything he did and said in that brief meeting, and I feel confident for Georgia with him in charge. Now, there's probably going to be there might be a couple of missed checks and things like that. Yeah, that's going to come with the territory. But I do think he can hold his own at that position. And he talked about it. He's going against Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter and
he's going against some very talented people.
Yeah, when you're doing that every day, you're going to be ready for whatever Clemson has to throw at you.
Now, there's a couple more things about the offense and the defense I'm going to jump into real quick. A lot of people are pretty concerned about the secondary at Georgia. I know in years past there's been some, there's been some questions about how well they can stand up. DJ Uangalele the guy has an absolute cannon for an arm. The guy can really throw hard. You wrote an article about the speed in the secondary. Give us a little bit of info. Give us a little bit of insight on that, if you would.
Well, I think of the positions of concern coming in to preseason camp, and that would be offensive line, wide receiver, and secondary. Certainly coming into this past week, secondary was probably the least of my concerns for Georgia in terms of, obviously with the transfers of Darian Kendrick and Tyke Smith. Essentially as two all-conference players that you're able to insert in the lineup. Now, two things, obviously you lose Tyke Smith, and I do not think that's a small thing. But I don't think it's a huge thing either. He had not completely unseated Latavius Brenny at that position. And I'm sure you remember Brenny, number 36, in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. He had a heck of a game. He's a big physical player and a really nice replacement for Mark Webb. But the way Georgia works the star you basically have a run support star, or I would say a standard star, and then you have a coverage star. And Georgia went to Tyreek Stevenson in those situations last year, and they were doing that with Tyke Smith this year. And he's basically a corner. He's a tough, he's a small, hard-hitting, squatty guy, but he's fast. Tyke Smith is, and probably a little bit quicker than Latavius Brenny. So I think that hurts him some. And the depth is a concern. Now, I say that I just on AJC.com today, you can go on there and I broke down the depth chart. They're pretty much set at this point. So I'm like, here's what we got heading into installation. And it wasn't until I got to really breaking that down, I was like, wow, you don't need any injuries back here, right? You're great. I like their first 6 or 7. I like them a lot. And I love the battle between Amir Speed and Keely Ringo at one corner. Darian Kendrick is solid at the other corner. Lewis Seen and Christopher Smith are solid at the safeties. And I think Brenny is going to be fine at the star, but you just, Lanning and Smart, and they like to mix and match and have specialized guys, and there's just not a ton of options there. So, these guys are going to have to be well conditioned, and they're going to have to play well.
I think that I think you're absolutely right. I think the defense overall, I think this may be one of the best defensive units for the first 11 that they put on the field that Georgia has probably had since, 2009 maybe. This is a very, very stout defense. I think one of the big concerns, at least not a concern, but a point to address, is Clemson's got a really solid coaching staff, and they've got a lot of talented players on that team. I think one of the big factors that we're going to see in this game is this will be the biggest game that DJ has ever played in. This will be probably the toughest defense he's ever faced. You take away that Clemson lost their top 3 receivers from last year, and they lost the best rusher they've ever had at Clemson, never mind also the best rusher ever in all of the ACC. I think that's a tremendous loss for them. I know their offensive line is pretty solid, but I feel like with Georgia's defensive line and their lack of experience at the running back position, I think it's going to be pretty difficult for them to run the ball. I think that's going to create some situations where we're really going to see how good our cornerbacks, defensive backs, star positions, and our safeties are. I think that they're going to go to a very heavy pass game, and you're going to see a mix of mid to deep balls to try and mix it up, because I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball. That brings me into the next thing of I've noticed a lot of attention on Georgia's wide receivers this year. Because traditionally Georgia's never had as many talented receivers as we have now. But I think a lot of people overlook the fact that we've never had this many talented running backs before either. I feel like the running back room almost just gets kind of, we got running backs for Georgia. But there is some serious talent there this year, and not just 1 or 2 guys. Most teams are lucky to have one good guy, right? Like Benny Snell was one great running back at Kentucky. Kerryon Johnson was one great running back at Auburn. Georgia's got like 5 guys standing back there that would be starting anywhere else. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, listen, I'm decidedly old school. I've been covering Georgia, off and on for 30 something years. So, obviously I go back to tailback U. Now it's RBU, running back U. And I just believe in the general philosophy of controlling the football and keeping the other team's offense off the field. And when I look at this matchup, now let's give Clemson some credit here. They've got a really stout defensive front too.
They do.
Maybe it rivals Georgia, might be better than Georgia's overall up front. So that matchup of the kind of revamped offensive lines on both sides of the ball and the defensive fronts, I think are the biggest factor in this game. And I also agree with you that I think it's heavily weighted toward Georgia of having a talent edge in that particular area. And with the way that Clemson likes to throw the ball around, and look, I think Justin Ross getting back for them is a big deal. He's going to be trouble. They got him playing the slot. It's going to be an issue in there for your star and your linebackers trying to cover that guy. But the running game, it's still so important to the game of football. And when I look at the matchup and I think about Georgia's O-line trying to pass protect against them, I just, everybody's talking about opening up the offense and throwing to those receivers, but I don't think that's the smartest tactic when you're facing a defensive front and a first-time O-line together for the game situation that Georgia's going to have. You don't want to just be going back there and passing. You've got to keep the what does Monken call it? He calls it the run-pass conflict. Mm-hmm. They have got to have that in their head. They can't just be charging after you because you're going to have problems all day. And I think that's a real advantage for Georgia. And, the best way to slow down a great defensive end like Miles Murphy is run the football right at him.
Right at him.
Because if he's coming, he's either going to take himself out of the play or get picked up pretty easily. And I like that matchup in this game.
So my thought process as the way I think Georgia is going to play this particular game. I don't think Georgia is going to go nose to nose and try to challenge Clemson with the deep ball. I think Georgia is going to you're going to see a very interesting mix of runs, screens, and short across the middle enough to get the Clemson DBs to step forward to try and protect against the run, because Georgia could cycle out a running back on every play and still be fine. And once those guys start stepping forward, I think that's when you're going to see some of the talent in that wide receiver room come out. We've got enough talent at the tight end position that can create some problems. Jermaine Burton, Karis Jackson, provided those guys are healthy and ready to go, those guys are super dangerous on their own. And all it takes really is for one defensive back or one safety to misjudge what's fixing to happen. Todd Monken, if you go back and watch tape from last year, Todd Monken is a master at showing you the same look 3 times with the same play and then changing what he does the 4th time. And what ends up happening is you go, wow, that guy was wide open. Well, yeah, he was wide open. That's because the first 3 times we did that, we did something different. Yeah. He's very, very good at that. That run pass conflict is, what you're talking about, creates that confusion in the secondary where they don't know whether to step up or drop back. If you drop back too much, these running backs will eat you alive. If you step up, we can burn you down the field. So I think it's going to be a really interesting game. I do think you're right. A lot of fans are thinking that it's going to be a wide open offense, something like maybe you see at Ole Miss, but I don't think you're going to see that in this game. You might see it later in the season, but you're not going to see it this first game. You're going to see a very tempered offense, one that's very deliberate in how it plays. The big factor for me that I like about JT Daniels is that some of his most dangerous times is whenever the pocket breaks on him and it's 3rd and long. That's when he loves to hurt you. Because a lot of teams will try and blitz the quarterback, rush the quarterback. He was mobile enough on a recovering knee last year to be dangerous on 3rd down. I think that could be very, very interesting this year.
That's one thing that is sort of leaked out of camp a little bit, is that he's much more mobile and confident in his knee. And if you go back and look at his first year at Southern Cal, he wasn't a running quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. But, they did a lot of that zone read stuff, and he kept it a good bit. And 18 years old, right out of school, he's, every bit of 6'2", 6'3". And he's filled out a lot too. A year of Georgia training table has made a difference. So, yeah, I think he's going to be much more confident in that regard. Now he was sacked, was it 10 times in 4 games, I think. Yeah. So, I don't know whether that was because of his knee or Georgia's O-line issues. And hey, Matthew Stafford gets sacked a lot, the guys who throw them, but Matt Ryan gets sacked a lot,
Well,
but they also complete a lot of big balls too. And that, that's again, like the gunslinger thing I was talking about. You're going to hold that thing to the last minute and try to find somebody. And sometimes that costs you.
I would like to point out that for you Clemson fans out there that happen to watch this video, Trevor Lawrence's first play in NFL was a sack. So I just, and he was pretty mobile too.
Yeah, he is.
So, well, Chip, I really appreciate you coming on the show here. I know you got tons of stuff to do. We don't want to hold you up, but we really appreciate you joining the show. You guys, please go check out Chip Towers over on AJC. He's been at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution now for as long as I can remember. He's been covering the Dogs forever. He really does give you the honest inside information. His information comes sometimes 2 and 3 times a day. He's got boots on the ground all over the place. So if you want an inside edge, go check out Chip Towers. He posts on Twitter all the time at C Towers, at C Towers AJC. And you can also find his email address on the website. It's chip.towers@ajc.com. Please reach out to him. He's an excellent resource. Great guy. Has been super, super awesome for us here. So we really appreciate him. So, Chip, anything else you want to add, sir?
No, I just enjoyed it. I'm really happy to hear about your podcast and how it's growing. And, it really is fascinating, the way modern day technology has lent a voice to everybody, and obviously you embraced it and you've got great, you do great work. And so glad to help you out. Be glad to visit again a little bit later in the season, and give me a call anytime.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. You guys have a great day. God bless. Go Dogs.